Hi, hello, good morning and welcome to Spardha Lines for the daily news analysis for the KAS examination in English. Today we have picked up a couple of important articles from the Hindu, the Indian Express and Deccan Herald newspapers, and these are very important from your preliminary and the mains examination point of view. What are you waiting for? Hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel and also share it with your other aspirants as well. Let's get started and look into the first article for the day. The first article says Uttarakhand government to bring in damage recovery bill. Let us try and understand what is this article in greater detail. Let me explain you why this damage recovery bill has been introduced in Uttarakhand. This is not only in the state of Uttarakhand, there are similar such attempts that were made by the state legislature. Let's say for example in the state of Haryana, or let's say for example in the state of Uttar Pradesh, or in the state of Madhya Pradesh as well. Why have the state governments in couple of states have come up with this damage recovery bill? Now you might be wondering, why is that we are studying about the state of Uttarakhand or Haryana or Madhya Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh for the KAS examination? Because there are likely consequences of being asked in your mains examination. Let me explain why. Let's say for example there is a riot. What happens during a riot? There are public properties in place. For example, it can be the buses, or it can be buildings as well, or it can be any of the public properties. Whenever we speak about right to protest, we have the right to protest. It happens to be a fundamental right. So you have the right to protest, which means you would be able to go to a specific place. You would be able to voice out your concern about a specific program, scheme or anything like that after the government has given the permission. But you're not supposed to take up arms against the state. So as and when you have the right to protest, it also means that you should not be disturbing the peace and tranquility. So there are two balances that we have to do. On one side, what you have is the right to protest, which is your right, and at the same time there are other rights as well, duties as well. What are the duties? One is to maintain sanity, the second is to ensure that there is no peace and tranquility that is disturbed, third is to ensure that the public properties are not destroyed. So while you have the right to protest, you also means you also have the duty to perform certain activities. But during this entire process, as and when you protest, it can also lead to a condition of riots. As and when there are riots that are taking place, these riots can ultimately result in loss to the public property. So whenever you have been given the right to protest, you should only restrict to the right to protest. While you engage in riot-like conditions, or you damage the public property, or you damage the private property as well, sometimes private properties are also damaged. So what would happen in this particular case? It is the state which has to suffer a loss. It is a private person who has to suffer a loss, the victim who suffers the loss, and ultimately who is going to compensate for it. And that is where we come up with the law in the form of damage recovery bill. So if at all there is a permission given for the right to protest, this should be only restricted to the right to protest, because that's your right. But then there is also a duty to maintain sanity amongst all these conditions. If at all the sanity is not maintained, leading to a riot like condition, leading to the loss of the public exchequer, leading to the private loss, in that particular case, how do we recover the damage? That is where a penalty will be imposed on this individual or the group or the organizers of this particular event, and ultimately these people will be imposed with the penalty, and it will be recovered from such individual. And that is what this article is all about. Why did we come up with it? Why has the Uttarakhand government come up with the damage recovery bill? That is because if you look into the data, ASSOCHAM estimated damage to public and private property worth 1,800 to 2,000 crores approximately during the Jat stir in Haryana in 2016. The Patidar agitation in Gujarat in 2015 took its toll as vandals torched 660 government vehicles and 1,822 public buildings. Kerala was the epicenter of Sabrimala protests in 2018 when 49 state-owned buses were damaged. So what we see is a lot of efforts that goes into building the public transport, or for example the public infrastructure, so on and so forth. For the public infrastructure, all of us would have contributed. It is the taxpayers' money. So in order to ensure that if at all the public exchequer's money is going for a toss, or the private victims or the private victim has to be compensated, we have to recover the money, and that is why we have the damage recovery bill, which means those whosoever is guilty of causing the riots or other disturbances will be liable to pay cost under this particular bill. So the intent is to recover the money from such individual who have caused this entire incident and take the money and compensate the state as well as the victims. So what is the agenda of this legislation? The agenda is to compensate to the victims and also those who lead the protest, those who are the organizers, who plan and provide encouragement and the participants. All these people will be taken into the charge, these people will be booked, and ultimately they will have to compensate for the damages. Why did the Uttarakhand government come up with this particular legislation? Or similarly, we have proposals by the UP government, or for example Madhya Pradesh, or for example Haryana. Why have all these states come up with such a legislation? That is because when you consider the state list, under the 7th schedule we have 3 lists. One happens to be the union or the central list. Then what we have is the state list. Then we have is the concurrent list. When you consider the state list, they have one of the items which is about the public order. So who has to control the public order? It is the state government which has to come up with a law and ultimately ensure that the public order is in place. So in the specific condition, we have public order which is getting violated because there are riot-like situations, because there is violation of the law and order and public order. It is the state which has to come up with a law. So the states have come up with the law basically to ensure that there is deterrence. What is the deterrence that we are speaking about? Let's say the permission has been given for you to protest about a particular policy decision, or for example about a law or about a scheme, so on and so forth. So they should restrict themselves to that particular region wheresoever they have been given the permission. But instead, if they go about destroying the public properties or they go about rioting in this particular case, they will be imposed with heavy penalty. So the heavy penalty that will be imposed will act as a deterrent to these rioters, will act as a deterrent for those who are protesting. So this will prevent them from violating the laws established by the late. So basically they would not do any activities which are illegal in nature, that is by torching the public buses, so on and so forth. And at the same time, they would also not hit on the private vehicles. That happens to be the first agenda. The second is about the rights and the responsibilities. What do we mean by it? For example, I have a right. What is the right? The right to protest. But at the same time, I also have the responsibility towards the society. It is also the fundamental duty of me to respect the values that have been espoused by the government. In this particular backdrop, I want to exercise my right to file a protest, to go to a protest, organize against the government, but I do not want to respect the sentiments of the other section of the people. I do not want to respect the duties that has been imposed on me. So this ultimately means that the balance is towards the right to protest and not the respect of the fundamental duties. The balance is with respect to going for the protest, exercising my right, but I am not respecting the right of other section of the people. When I am given the permission to exercise my right to protest, it also means there are other sections of the people whose right should also be exercised, which means that the agitation or the protest should be peaceful. I should not be blocking the roads. I should not be ensuring problems to the other section of the society. While I exercise my right, I should not be violating someone else's right. So there is a right that I have, but there is a responsibility also imposed on me, but I am only caring about my right. If at all I am only caring about my right, not exercising the right of other people, not respecting the right of other people, it means that balance is getting violated, which means these rights are to be balanced with the responsibilities. These rights have to go hand in hand with the duties as well, and that is why the state has come up with it. So this also means the right to continue with the normal activity, which means that you cannot keep torching vehicles after vehicles, you cannot destroy the public infrastructure, you cannot go after the public infrastructure when there is a lot of investments that is made by the state, and you cannot also hit the private people, where if at all you do so, you will be hit with the damages concept, and ultimately you may have to pay compensation to the private individual whose car or whose infrastructure has been damaged by these kind of rioters. So whosoever is led the protest, whosoever has organized the protest, whosoever has planned the protest, whosoever has encouraged this entire issue will be ultimately having to pay the compensation to the state as well as to the individual. Now the question is, do we have no law? For example, the states are coming up with their own kind of laws. Do we have no central law? Yes, we do have a law, but that's a toothless tiger. Why? Because as of now, India has no central legislation governing the damages. For example, the present law that we have is Prevention of Damage to the Public Property Act of 1984, which prescribes a jail term and fine for the convicts, but has no provision for the recovery of the damages, which ultimately leads us to a question that we do not have a central legislation which is governing the entire country. Because we do not have a central legislation, the states are made to come up with their own law, and even the existing law that we have does not take a keen look into the damages or the recovery process. It only lays a certain fine, and it only ensures that people are penalized and a certain amount of criminal antecedents, that is a jail term, is imposed on them. We do not have any modes of compensation to the victims or the state recovering the money, which is why states are coming up with this particular law. Since we do not have a central legislation for the recovery and the existing law focuses only on the criminal antecedents and the penalty in the form of fine and not recovery, which is why we have this particular process. In fact, when we look into the Supreme Court as well, the Supreme Court in the past has given certain guidelines as to how recovery process has to be made. We do not have a legislation, but certain guidelines are given by the Supreme Court. In 2007, the Supreme Court took note of various instances where there were large-scale destruction of the private and the public properties in the name of agitations, bunds and hartals. In fact, the court had appointed two committees. One happens to be Justice K.T. Thomas Committee. The other happens to be Senior Advocate Fali Nariman, to suggest guidelines to be followed in such cases. So they ultimately come up with the recommendation, and this can probably be asked in your preliminary examination. Justice K.T. Thomas Committee or Advocate Fali Nariman Committee, recently seen in news, is with respect to what? If at all there are questions like that, remember there are these aspects that you may have to consider. In 2009, the court issued guidelines based on the recommendations. High courts may set up a machinery to investigate the damage caused and award compensation wherever mass destruction of the property has taken place. So what is that the High Courts can do? They will appoint one of the committee or the tribunal. This committee or the tribunal will investigate whatsoever is the damage that has been perpetuated against the victim or the state. The same will be recovered from the planners, the organizers, so on and so forth. The rioters will be made strictly liable, pay compensation for the damage caused to the property once the nexus between the accused person and the incident is established. So once the investigation is completed, if at all they are able to prove that it is this person, this organizer or the group of individuals who committed it, they will be imposed with the penalty. A claims commission headed by a retired judge may be appointed to estimate the damage and investigate the liability. In fact, the Supreme Court in Kaushik Jacob vs. Union of India 2017 reiterated the law needs to be updated. What is the law we are speaking about? We are speaking about the Damage to Public Property Act of 1984. So the 2018, the Supreme Court took cognizance of the incidents of vandalism and rampage carried out by the violent mobs in the name of protest, pronouncing that individuals and organizers will be held responsible for the criminal and civil liability. The court said individuals who are responsible for it will ultimately have to bear the damages. How does it work in other countries? If we have to take the example of United States has state-wise laws with heightened penalties for protesters who block traffic, authorized law enforcement agency to recover costs from the protesters who damage or obstruct critical infrastructure. What is this critical infrastructure? This basically includes oil and gas pipelines, electricity transmission towers, railways and public transport vehicles. On the backdrop of United States of America, maybe we can think of bringing similar such laws into India. We have the state governments who have already taken up this initiative. What if the central can come up with a uniform law across the length and the breadth of the country is what we have to think about. Apart from that, we already have couple of states and couple of cities in India which have already employed the facial recognition technology. So why not capture the images of the rioters, enter those faces into the databases of the country or for the state or for example the city, and ultimately capture who these individuals are and enforce these laws as well. If at all they continue to do it, if at all they happen to be a proclaimed offender, if at all they happen to continue with couple of instances in the same, they should also be put behind bars and not be released for number of years until a transformation takes place. These are some of the examples that we can initiate as part of this process. Hi Nitin, good morning. Yes, Nariman recently passed away and he happened to be one of the greatest advocates that India has ever seen. He was the champion for the social justice. Yes, he has also represented India in the Kaveri dispute, and let's pray that his soul rests in peace. Thank you Nitin for the update. Crazology, please provide current affairs magazine. Yes, we will provide these magazines as soon as possible, and we will be providing you the best content that you will ever see when it comes to the KPSC examination. This is all we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article here speaks about postal stamps on Yakshagana released. What are we speaking about? We are speaking about Yakshagana. This is important from your culture paper. It can be important from your preliminary and the mains examination point of view. Yakshagana, what does it stand for? If we speak about Yakshagana, this can be broadly divided into two words. One is Yaksha, the second is Gana. What is Yaksha? Yaksha is about the spirits. It is about the nature spirits. It is about the spirit of life. And what is Gana? Gana, as we all know, happens to be the song. So when reverence, respect for the mythology and the Puranas is acted in a form of a drama, dance and music, and respect for the nature and the spirit, and that is what is called as Yakshagana. So Yakshagana is a practice of drama which also includes dance, it also includes music, it also includes Puranas, it also includes mythology, where characters and scenes and other Puranas concepts have been taken up, and when they are acted upon in the form of a drama, that is what is called as Yakshagana. Where is it practiced? It is practiced predominantly in the state of Karnataka. This can be very, very important from your preliminary examination point of view. Which are the languages that it is played in? Generally, if we speak about the languages, it is often done in the Kannada language, and that apart, it is also done in Tulu language, and in few pockets of Kerala as well, it is practiced in the Malayalam language. So apart from Karnataka, we do have the practice of Yakshagana in the state of Kerala. That can also be another important parameter. So predominantly in the state of Karnataka, but it is also practiced in the state of Kerala as well. So the languages include Kannada, Tulu, Malayalam, so on and so forth. This Yakshagana is believed to have evolved from pre-classical music and theatre during the period of Bhakti movement. This can be broadly categorized into two parts. One happens to be Tenku Tittu, the other happens to be Badaga Tittu. What are the differences between these two types? Towards the south, from Dakshina Kannada to Kasaragod of Tulunadu region, the form of Yakshagana is called as Tenku Tittu, and towards the north from Udupi up to Uttara Kannada, it is called as the Badaga Tittu. These are broadly categorized categories, and this is what will be taken into the key factors when it comes to your preliminary examination. So when it comes to Yakshagana, they basically take references, let's say for example from Ramayana, or let's say for example Mahabharata, a concept or a particular scene or a particular situation or a circumstance will be taken from any of these Puranas or the mythologies, and ultimately it will be conveyed to the people in the form of dance, drama, so on and so forth. And also remember, when it comes to Yakshagana is very important part, cultural aspect of Karnataka. So there are similar such cultural practices that are present in the state of Kerala as well. Which are these folk dance drama that is present in the state of Kerala is what you have to put in the comment section. So what we have is Yakshagana in the state of Karnataka. what are the practices, similar such practices that you see in Kerala is what you have to put on the comment section. Now let's look into the next article for the day. So these are the elements of the Yakshagana. For example, the act, basically we did discuss about it, the act, and then there are musical instruments like chande, harmonium, maddale, tala, so on and so forth. Then there is dress costumes, which includes large scale headgear, colored faces, elaborate costumes, legs, and they also have the musical beats which is called as geche. And then there are popular troops known for performing Yakshagana, Saligrama Mela, Dharmasthala Mela, Mandarthi Mela, Perduru Mela are some of the leading teams. These are some of the elements of the Yakshagana that you also have to remember. Let's look into the next article for the day. This article here is speaking about one of the programs called as Master Mentors Geo Enabling Indian Scholars Program. So what is this program all about? This happens to be an online program that aims to inculcate geospatial thinking and develop a research oriented mindset among students from 8th grade to undergraduate level who will form the future workforce of the country. So what is this MMGEIS? This happens to be a program. This is for addressing and this is for making sure that people understand what geospatial technology is all about. When it comes to the geospatial technology, what happens? There are a couple of aspects to come to geospatial technology. For example, if I have to tell you a situation, what if you are traveling from source A to a destination B? Let's say if you are in the state of Karnataka in Bengaluru district, what if you have to travel from, let's say, Bengaluru airport to Electronic City? You are new to the city. How do you go? You put on the Google Maps and you put on the location, and with the help of the location you travel from source A to the destination B. So how does GPS work? This is the concept of geospatial technology. So basically helping people understand the applications of the geospatial technology, various aspects of geospatial technology, so that they can come up with the new concepts. And ultimately this new concept and the innovation is where we can claim to an intellectual property, right, is what is called as the Master Mentors Geo Enabling Indian Scholars Program. So from an early age, these individuals and the students will be taught about the geospatial technology. The program aims to engage about 5 lakh students over the next 5 years. In 2022, India saw over 66,400 patent applications, including 140 geospatial patents. The program will work towards fostering a strong IP framework to enable more patents from India in its journey towards becoming a global geospatial innovation hub. And since the launch of the program, both organizations have given shape to their commitment. So this is about ensuring the geospatial technology, its thinking, its intellectual property, its applications is taught to the undergraduates as well as to those who have the will and the wish to learn about the geospatial technology. Now if we look into what the geospatial technology is all about, this includes remote sensing, geographic information system, global positioning system, so on and so forth. These are the various aspects of the geospatial technology. So as and when we study about geospatial technology, we have the remote sensing. The remote sensing basically includes the geospatial technology used to study objects and surfaces at faraway distances using the images and data collected from space or airborne camera or sensor platforms. For example, we have a satellite. This satellite will capture what is happening on the earth. It will capture the image. This image will be sent to the data center through the applications, through various other protocols and guidelines and prescribed standards that they have. They will ultimately conclude how this image can be used, what could be its likely applications, how the electronic impulses work, how the radio detection and ranging works. All of these will be taken up and ultimately decided. Then we have the geographic information system, which is a framework for gathering, managing, mapping and analyzing of physical environment data of a specific location on the earth's surface. For example, if we are speaking about, let's say, the High Court of Karnataka, where is the High Court of Karnataka located? How many trees are present in and around High Court of Karnataka? We have the Kaban Park in and around the High Court of Karnataka. How many trees are provided? So with respect to the specificities and with respect to what is happening in that locality, how information has to be derived is part of the geographic information system. This technology has enormous applications in the field of conservation, ecology, disaster response, business, marketing, engineering, sociology, demography, astronomy, so on and so forth. And finally, we all know the applications of the global positioning system, where it has the satellite, it helps in enabling the positions of the people and at the same time moving from one place to another. These are the applications of the geospatial technology, and such an application will also be part of the teaching process so that they are able to think innovatively, is what is this program all about. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article is important from your preliminary examination point of view. We have Bhavani Tekanda Nanjunda from Nappulu village in Karnataka's Kodagu district, who was able to win 3 golds in Khelo India Winter Games. So we did discuss about the Khelo India Winter Games recently, but what you have to remember is that we have Bhavani Tekada Nanjunda, who was able to win 3 golds in the Khelo India Winter Games, and the girl is from the plains near Kaveri in Karnataka, has sparkled in the Winter Games with stunning sky skills. She won gold for topping the 10-kilometer Nordic ski competition, 1.6 kilometer sprint and 5 kilometer sprint. So there can be a likely question that could be asked that Bhavani Tekanda Nanjunda is from which of the following professions, and there might be professions which might be given as well. So she has won 3 gold medals in the Khelo India Winter Games. These are important pointers from your preliminary examination point of view. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article here is speaking about Raisina dialogue. We did speak about the Raisina dialogue recently in our current affairs session, but what this article primarily focuses is on the concerns associated with this entire conference. Recently we did have the Raisina dialogue. It took place in national capital, which happens to be Delhi, and this conference is more about how India tries to see the global problems and solutions to these global problems. When you look into what happened in the year 2024, in the Raisina dialogue, we had people from Europe, we had representatives from Europe. These representatives from Europe spoke about a couple of issues, and one of the issues that they also spoke about was in reference to Russia and Ukraine issue. While people spoke about Russia and Ukraine crisis, which happens to be a global issue, where India is trying to put out its concerns towards this particular issue and also come out with the solution. So you had many representatives from Europe who also spoke about this particular issue. While they criticized Russia, they also criticized other countries as well. The focus of this article says, whenever you have such conferences where criticism has been made against a particular aggressor or a country, you also require another country's representative, which happens to be an aggressor, to represent as well. In this specific region, in this specific conference, you have conference where you had people from European countries criticize Russia, but then you did not have representatives from Russia to also counter it as well. So this means the other side of the story was not heard. So how will you come up with a solution to a problem when the problem itself does not have the aggressor state? So whenever we are seeking for a solution to a problem, you need both the parties, the so-called aggressor, the so-called victim in this specific case, and you need both the parties being represented in that particular conference to enter into an amicable solution to an existing problem. So you only had countries speak about the aggression of Russia, but when you do not have what the viewpoint of the Russia is, then you would not be able to come to an amicable settlement for that particular issue, and that is the major issue, says the author. So the author in this particular case goes on to say that whenever a conference is being discussed or a particular issue is being discussed, you need people, both the sides, to come and visit this conference so that an ultimate decision can be concluded. That apart, there was minimal presence from Southeast Asia, Latin America and even South Asia as well. Except for Nepal and Bhutan, many countries were not part of this particular conference. we speak about democracy, we speak about human rights, when countries who are part of this process are not even represented or not even part of this negotiation, how can you speak about such bigger stories? And at the same time, we did not have any representation from Israel. There were conversations which were absent completely about Israeli war in Gaza, and there were no issues that were spoken with respect to Palestine, the human rights violations, so on and so forth. So the Raisina dialogue, which is made in India, so the Raisina dialogue, which is the conference of India, so the Raisina dialogue, which is the platform of India, this platform will ultimately have to ensure that all these are taken into picture, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article says, can the IMEC address the Red Sea crisis? What is this article all about? The article here is speaking about India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. It is the India, Middle East Economic Corridor that happens to be the focus of this article. Why the focus of this article is on this IMEC? That is because the article here is primarily focusing about Red Sea. We did recently discuss about the Red Sea crisis as well. If we speak about the Red Sea crisis, what is the major issue? This happens to be the Red Sea. So when majority of the, let's say for example, trade or for example energy that comes from Europe, or for example let's say from the northern countries of Africa, or let's say for example from the Yemen or for example Saudi Arabia, goes through this Red Sea. Why? That is because they are huge in number and these are large shipments, and ultimately it travels through Bab el Mandab and ultimately enters the Arabian Sea and enters India. So this is how it goes. For example, from many countries, for example it can be European countries, so they enter this area and ultimately enter through the Bab el Mandab and then reach India. Similarly, they have couple of other energy reserves, or for example oil or other trade, which also passes through this Bab el Mandab, the Red Sea area, and ultimately reaches India. But what is happening right now? There is crisis that is unfolding in this part. You have a few fundamentalist organizations and you have couple of these organizations which are also supported by Iran as well. These fundamentalist organizations supported by Iran are causing a problem in this particular area. So what are they engaging in? They are engaging in activities of piracy. They are also destroying the shipments passing through the Red Sea as well, and ultimately it is creating a lot of losses. So instead of these shipments going through the Red Sea, they are taking all the way a different route, which is through the Cape of the Good Hope and ultimately reaching India. If at all they are not passing through the Red Sea route and they are taking the Cape of Good Hope route, in that particular case, what are the issues? One, it could greatly impact the cost. How? For example, this happens to be a cheaper alternative. So instead of traversing through this particular path, what we are focusing is on another path. So it takes a longer distance as well. Distance increases. So if distance increases, cost of moving that particular trade or the shipment will also increase. This will also cause a significant delay as well. All this ultimately means that there can be escalating prices, which can ultimately lead to inflation, and people will have to bear the brunt of it, and they may have to pay a larger cost as well. So this article currently goes on to say that we have the Red Sea Ouse, which happens to be a strategic importance. We have the transit points, 12% of the international trade passes through it, and if at all there is a conflict, then this entire container and the oil carriers and the shipments have to go to the Cape of the Good Hope, and this will ultimately increase the ocean freight, inflated insurance costs, longer voyage times leading to delay and the shortage of the products, leading ultimately to inflation. In order to prevent it, China has its own One Belt One Road initiative. So China is promoting the BRO or the One Belt One Road initiative. So as an alternative to this, can we make use of the India Middle East Economic Corridor, is what is this article all about. So this IMEC was promoted during the G20 conference. As and when this particular conference was promoting this corridor, that is India, Middle East and Europe corridor, what we have to keenly look at is there are a couple of challenges and concerns. What are these concerns? One, when it comes to the One Belt One Road initiative, it has been in existence for a very long period of time, which is why they are able to reap the benefits of it. They are able to make huge infrastructure. They are able to connect on the continental front and also on the maritime front. They are able to engage with the countries. They are bringing up camaraderie relationship between these countries, and ultimately, because of the long understanding between China as well as all these countries which are part of One Belt One Road initiative for a very long period of time, there has been an infrastructure that has been developed. But when it comes to IMEC, we do not have enough infrastructure right now. So we have to start speaking to the countries. We have to enable good relationship between the Middle East countries as well as Europe, put in a lot of investments and infrastructural development, for which a lot of finances will also be initiated, for which a lot of finances will also have to be enabled as well. That happens to be the first major challenge. The second major challenge is with respect to Israel as well as Palestine. As of now, there are bleak relationship between Israel as well as Palestine, because Israel and Palestine relationship are not good right now. Arab does not have good relationship right now with Israel, and as a result, this happens to be a major flaw right now where this multinational initiative is not being initiated. Third, we also have the Strait of Hormuz, and we also have close proximity with Iran. If at all this initiative is enabled, what does it mean? Iran would be able to control this channel as well. It will not allow certain shipments or, for example, trade related activities to pass in the Strait of Hormuz. Why? Because Iran has close proximity to the Strait of Hormuz. So the author says this happens to be a third challenge where Iran does not have good relationship with Israel. Iran does not have good relationship with European countries. Iran does not want to have good relationship with Israel, and as a result, if at all these shipments or any of these European shipments pass close by to Strait of Hormuz, Iran can be an obstacle to it. An alternative to it can also be we can develop Oman as part of this entire initiative of IMEC, but it ultimately means we do not have any development right now in Oman. So we again have to invest a lot of money to increase the infrastructural boost in Oman. Only after the infrastructural boost happens, we would have enabled a stronger infrastructure. That is when this entire process will work. So for which what we have to develop is the infrastructure in all these Middle East countries is this article all about. So basically the author goes on to say what we have to conduct is an empirical study about the advantages of the IMEC, where investments have to be made, which are the countries which have to make these investments. If at all we have these investments that are recognized and if there is quantifiable data for the same, we can go ahead with the investments. So if at all the investments have to be made, we require data. This data has to be collected. So investments will have to be attracted from governments, international organizations, private sector entities, says the author. Finally, a comprehensive multinational operational framework is required, a blueprint is required, and understanding is required. So that part is also the need of the hour, is what is this article all about. Now let's look into the next article for the day. This article is important from your preliminary examination point of view. So this article is speaking about Blanets. What are these Blanets? Blanets are nothing but a class of exoplanets that directly orbit the black holes. They are similar to other planets. They have enough mass to be rounded off to their own gravity, but are not massive enough to start thermonuclear fusion and become the stars. These planets would be able to grow and reach up to the size of up to 3000 the times of the mass of the Earth. Because of the active galactic nucleus, a planet would have an extremely long orbital period, taking around 1 million years to complete an orbit around its host black hole. So basically these are nothing but the class of exoplanets that directly orbit the black holes. These are important from the preliminary examination point of view. So if you have liked this initiative, please do hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also share it with your fellow aspirants as well. Thank you for watching. All the best.